Hello, this video is about energy balances, and the learning goals is to understand the concept of energy balances, to be able to set up the energy balances, and to understand the difference between internal and external energy balances. And for an energy balance, we will set up a control volume by defining its boundary. We'll have, let me pick the laser pointer here. I'll have energy flows that go into the control volume. These we count positive. We have energy flows that go out of the control volume. With these we count negative. We also have sources of thermal energy. We count these positive. We also may have a sink of thermal energy, which we count negative. And altogether, there may be a result, as a result, a temporal change, for example, of inner energy. If we put that together, then the cause is that the sum of all inflows minus the sum of all outflows plus the sum of all sources minus the sum of all sinks is non-zero, and that's then the cause. And in this case, we may have as an effect the temporal change of, for example, inner energy. We will elaborate this with a few example objects or bodies. The first one is a black body. The black body, control volume torn around, receives incident radiation and emits radiation. So the energy balance is then positively counted the incident radiation, that's here the first term, negatively counted the second term, the emitted radiation. We move forward to a non-black object, one that reflects and emits, no transmission. We have again incoming radiation, which is refracted and goes out, and we have emission that goes out. So for the balance, incoming positive first term incident radiation, and then outgoing reflected and emitted radiation. To generalize what an outer energy balance is, this considers all energy flows across the control volume borders. We will see the importance of that when I move on to the inner balance. Now, what is then if I also allow transmission? Well, then I have incident radiation. Part of that is reflected out again. Part of that goes through the object, is transmitted out, and the object emits also. So from all the incident radiation, you see in the control volume is just the part kept that's been absorbed there. Now the balance, the first term, the plus, is again the incident radiation, and the outgoing is the reflected portion, the transmitted portion, and the emitted portion. And to put more meat to the bone here, what is coming in is the sum of all arriving radiation energy, that may be the surface brightness of any body or object times the view factor from that body to this considered object 3. And the outgoing, that's Q dot 3 because it's reflection, emission, and transmission, so that's the surface brightness from body 3. Now let's move forward to look at an inner energy balance. And the inner energy balance, we draw here the incident radiation, transmitted and reflected radiation. Well, the transmitted doesn't play a role, and we will decide on the reflected in a second. Emission, of course, will be there. Well, the energy balance only counts what is changing the inner energy, and this in this case is absorption. So, as I said, the inner energy balance considers only energy flows that can change the inner energy, and as such reflected radiation is not part of that, so that goes away, and I only count absorption as coming in and emission as going out. So the first part is the absorbed part of the incident radiation, and the second term is the emission of that object. So it's just the absorbed part of the surface brightness of that body that radiates onto my object 3 times the view factor. And the outgoing is just the emission part of the surface brightness. So that's truly just emission from body 3. So I have absorption and emission that forms that balance, the inner balance. Now let's compare the two. So the balance written down looks similar, but there notice that this is the absorbed part and that's the emitted part, where we have here all incoming and outgoing flows. These are the more detailed explanations that I showed. I'd like to summarize this here. And we have the incoming and the outgoing ones. In the inner balance, only the absorbed part of surface brightness is taken into account. Reflection and transmission play no role. However, as I mentioned when showing the outer balance, there we have the incoming radiation, but reflection and transmission leave the control volume again. And as a final result, it doesn't matter whether you make an inner or outer energy balance. The result is identical. So you can choose which one you pick depending on appropriateness. And the advantage for the inner balance is there are less terms. However, we need to think a bit more. For the outer balance, we can go after the recipe and just write down according to what step 1 to whatever is. So we can directly calculate with surface brightnesses. So the inner balance, less terms, more advanced thinking. The outer balance, we can follow the recipe but have more terms to write down. Now the comprehension questions are: which events or what leads to a temporal change of thermal energy in the control volume? Which terms are additionally considered in the outer energy balance? Can we transform the inner and the outer energy balance into each other? And when or for which applications is the inner or the external energy balance more useful? Thanks for listening.